quick one. Information alone isn't transformation. I've read enough books and listened to enough fucking podcasts to know that. If you want to do more than just listen, my weekly groups are in the show notes. I'm Chad.Taylor.Psychotherapist, author of It's You, Oh Fuck, It's Me. No tips, no fixing, just real conversations. Today I've got Chayse here. Chayse, who the fuck are you?
Hey, I'm a Perth guy that specializes in sensual and erotic massage for women and couples.
Exciting. I think I'm getting a bit turned on there, Chayse.
I know you like your good massages.
I love a good massage, although not the erotic type, as I'm in a monogamous relationship. Tell us a bit more about yourself outside of that. I understand that there's probably a few parts to you doing that sort of work.
Yeah, well, I started because I studied sexology as a hobby and an interest of mine. I found that love, sex, and relationships was a topic that you will never learn everything about. And so I found it really fascinating because every book I read, every podcast I listened to, every research I did online spun me down a different spiral of interesting topics and things about the body and love and connections. And it just grew from there, essentially.
This is exciting for me, right? Because I come into this podcast with a beginner's mind. This isn't a podcast where I think I'm the smartest person in the room. But what drives a human being to want to study sexology, or what is it about us that do you think that turns sexology or sex or erotic massage into a career and into a passion?
Yeah, well, like anything, it starts with a value, right? We have to have value in something. And so I found myself in love with two women and being brought up, in a family with a Jehovah's Witness father and a Christian mother. You're brought up very, you love one person at a time. And so being in love with two women was kind of like, why do I have these initial feelings? Like, this shouldn't be possible, right? We should only love one person at a time. So I started researching that, and that brought me down the path of polyamory and non-monogamy. And then I learned about kink, BDSM, and then it sent me down all these years of interesting topics. And so that's how I just found it so incredibly fascinating. And essentially I started dating a female sex worker, and she sort of gave me some ideas of how to promote this kind of stuff, how to, what women are looking for. And I really, truly believed that women deserve to have an experience where they felt desired, beautiful. And it just basically blew up from there because I was not expecting the therapeutic work of it. And so, yeah.
It's exciting to hear that because I try and be as real as I can on this podcast, right? That's my role in the world, and I love to become more real. And there's part of me there's a bit of insecurity there, right? That thinks, as a man, because I think a lot of men would be listening to this almost making a judgment because they think they already know how to please women. They think they've got it all together when they probably actually never sat down and asked the woman how they want to be pleased, or do you like this? Or for me, it's taken a lot of time and a lot of work to understand that I don't know everything. Every woman is different. Every human being is different. What else could you elaborate on that for us? You learned from woman or from your studies?
Well, I think the biggest thing is blunt, honest communication. Because I read this book called Want, and it was written by Julian Anderson, I think it was. It was the sex ed coach on the show Sex Education. And she wrote this book where I think it was 3,000 women or something had written in their true fantasy imagining thoughts that they used during masturbation. And that really opened my eyes on all these different ways that women, create their own fantasy in their mind and their own desire in their mind. And then I read another book, still reading at the moment, that was made in the 70s for women about how they touch themselves, how they masturbate. And then that just brought me down a whole nother path on how every woman touches themselves differently. And there's a website called OMG Yes, which actually visually shows women how to masturbate in many different ways. And so all that together, I think, shows how every woman is a snowflake. They're all unique and different in their own way, and you've got to find that way. And you really don't know that way until you communicate with them, but you've got to make it very authentic. When you ask her that question, oh, baby, what works well for you, or what do you like? It's going to come from a real place of authentically wanting to know for her benefit, because us men tend to ask for a reason for our own benefit. And I think it has to come authentically, and women are very intuitive and they can tell when you're doing something for yourself. And so you've got to be really authentic about wanting to understand her and her body and not making it about yourself to start with.
Yeah, and I think I see a lot of people in the world using our partners as a masturbation device. We're not even really loving them. We're using them. You know, Jim Fries talks about when we first meet a partner, there's all these different sex positions. And then after a short time of dating or being in love, there ends up being three. The one you start with, the one that makes her come, the one that makes him come. And it becomes pretty monotonous and pretty, what's the word? I suppose regular, pretty vanilla. I noticed I had a read through your profile, and you give couples, you give women these fantasy experiences. Does somebody fill out an intake? If somebody was to book you as a, what do you call yourself, therapist, practitioner, whatever, lover? I don't know, probably not lover, but do they fill out a form of what like, do you get them to fill out these specifics in the intake form?
No, it's something I'm thinking about implementing. But it's really tough because, I mean, you obviously want to keep their discretion. Some people don't want to have to do that, and I get that, but for my own safety, it's more important. But with women with disabilities that can't communicate or have an issue communicating, or their anxiety is so high, they can't communicate in person, they usually send me an email or a message stating what they want to, explore and what they don't, and where they do want to be touched and where they don't, and where they might want to be touched depending on how they're feeling. And so there is that sense of communication. Before any client, I always ask, where do they not want to be touched? Because I can figure out generally where they're enjoying to be touched, but you never know that a scar on their shoulder might remind them of a domestic violence thing with a male. And so that could flare up this sort of, re-trigger them in a sense by touching that area specifically. So finding where they don't want to be touched, I think is most important.
Yeah, I love to hear that. You can probably see me, my mind's deep at work while I'm listening to you, thinking about my own life, because I don't think we do that enough. I talk a lot about contracts, and there's a book called No More Mr. Nice Guy that I've recommended to a lot of men. And it really is about, we set up these covert contracts in the world, almost these contracts we go into that nobody else knows they're entering the contract. And I think life would be so much easier if we set these sort of contracts. And I don't mean the woman's in the kitchen and the man's in the yard. I mean the contracts that work for each couple, right? For each person. Because I know in my relationship, we have a lot of these contracts and we don't really deviate from them within reason. And I think they work really well. I'm sure my partner, fiance Sophie, would say the same thing. And hearing you say that really makes sense to me, because funny enough, I did have a couple that came in and they were in their late 50s and they'd been together for 30 years. And all of a sudden, at one point, he was going down on her and she just lost her shit and yelled at him and said, after 30 years, I thought you would have known I didn't like that. And he was absolutely shocked because he'd been doing this thing to her for 30 years, thinking she was enjoying it. At what point in a relationship do you say, actually, I'm not really enjoying that? You let it go because at the start it's all awkward and you're putting on your best face. And then all of a sudden it built up and built up and built up. And then it was almost like, don't touch me there again. And So I think what you've said there, in the same dynamic, I had it with a couple a while ago where after 40 years, you think he'd know how to make me a cup of tea. He's never, ever made me a cup of tea. So we worked through this making a cup of tea thing. And then the next week they come back and she says, don't ever fucking make me a cup of tea again. After 40 years, he didn't even know how I like it. And that's the thing for me with my coffee and with my tea. I like a certain amount of milk. I like a certain amount of sugar. A teaspoon's a teaspoon, depending on who's throwing the teaspoon in. And hot water is different. And the amount, a little bit of milk for some people, right, is different to a little bit of milk for another person. And I think it really is not talked about enough, this stuff. So I'm so grateful to have you on here.
I think the something I can add there is women, don't want to have to tell you how to eat them out, right? Women don't want to have to tell a man how much sugar she wants in her coffee, right? But what a man can visually see is how she responds to that. So, if he gives her a cup of coffee and she's like, thanks, why is she not, thanks, hon, thanks for that, I love that. And oh, fuck, that tastes so good, right? Like, if she's not responding in that way, I'm going to be like, oh, would you like more sugar? Oh, would you like less sugar? And that's the same thing for, going down on someone and being able to tell what they're enjoying and not enjoying is how is their body responding? And so I'm always thinking about the micro expressions of her desire. And so it's not always, verbal, but it's also how is her body? Is her hand clenching into my hand while I'm doing that? Is her pelvis moving back, which means I could be giving too much pressure? Is her pelvis pushing into my face more, which means she probably wants more pressure, so then I'll just give more pressure? Is her pelvis moving around and around because she likes a circular motion? And so there's like 100 different tells that women are giving off with their body that they won't give off with their voice. You got to be able to read that, I think.
Yeah. And that communication, right? They say that 7% of communication is what we the physical word that we say, and 20 odd percent is our tone of voice and the way we say it.
Yeah.
And then over 60% of communication is body language. So it's really, really good to hear you say that. And I don't know how this podcast will land, right, for a lot of my listeners, but I also think that if you can listen with an open mind, I'm thinking to myself, fuck, I'm a therapist. Do I do all these things? And to be honest, I would be better off asking my partner and her being fully honest, really. The last guest I had on was Matt Peel, and he was an exercise physiologist, and he was all about standing up straight. His business was stand up your desk. So it was almost like, what's the universe telling me here with these guests is what I'm thinking. I noticed in the background you've got your Perth Central Massage sign, and I did notice that you've got an award there. Do you want to tell us a bit about that? You just won an award?
Right. Recently, just the other day in Melbourne, the AAIA award, the best male sensual erotic massage provider. Yeah, it's an incredible award and, incredible honor to win this award because it really helps legitimize that, this kind of thing is out there in the world. It can be safe. It can be pleasurable. And women are voting for it. The women are voting for their favorite and the best they've, had, because word of mouth is probably the best way and the safest way that women can have these experiences. Because let's face it, anyone can advertise, right? Anyone can advertise something, but whether it's recommended from a friend, whether she's coming in as the guinea pig and then she's going to recommend it to her other friends if she had a good first experience, that's the most safest way. Because I think the other safe way is if the guy's been in the industry a long time. If he's been in the industry a short time, you don't know if he's safe. But if someone's been in the industry 6 years, like me, if I was doing bad things, I would have been locked up a long time ago. It's as simple as that. You cannot be in this industry and be doing unethical things for this long without being in prison, because they will, send you to prison. That's one of the dangerous things about being a part of this industry. is the risks.
Yeah, it's a lot of responsibility that you guys hold. It's a bit like if a therapist ever gets struck off, it's generally been inappropriate relationships, sexual relationships with a client. And this might be a question you don't want to answer, so say pass. Is there times where you get really turned on? Like, can you actually segregate this as a job? And I ask that because I've got repeat clients where I'm like, oh, this person I could see this person really being a friend, and we've got to know each other over 5 years of monthly or fortnightly sessions. I could see this person being a friend to me,
Yeah.
but there's an ethical barrier there as a client. Is it sometimes hard for you to not be turned on, or would you rather not answer that?
I'm more than happy to answer that question. It is hard.
Yeah, literally, literally.
But it's, look, it's situational, right? If the 40-year-old woman that comes in to book this as a fantasy of hers and wants to touch me in a way that arouses her and it turns her on and she has a better experience if I am also hard, I don't see the negatives in that. I had, not going to name names or anything, but I've had a sex workers book where they are always giving to men, right? They are
Okay.
always, and so they want to have an experience that is purely about them. And this has happened many times. And in those cases, I tell them that they are not allowed to touch me because this experience in that situation is about her and it's about her receiving. And, her being in this industry, she understands all the negative men and the way men can manipulate things for their own benefit. But if she comes in here and she's a stunning, beautiful woman, if I'm a straight guy, I can appreciate a beautiful woman. To be the one guy in her life that has completely made it about her and not made it about himself, and that she can leave safely and look back with fond memories, and me have never been that toxic man, I actually value myself more because of that than ever trying to make it about myself. It's because you can have a stunning woman and not make it about yourself. That is strength. That is really, really hard to do as a man. And to be able to do that and to be able to just make it about them.
This is exactly the conversations we have and the content we study in the weekly group. If you're interested, the details are in the show notes. Love to see you there. And I respect that as a man because I get a lot of women come to me, teenage girls or mid-20s, or it doesn't really matter, but where there's been men in their lives that have let them down, whether it's a father figure, whether it's sexual abuse, an uncle, and we hold responsibility. Any practitioner that has the word therapy or therapist, there's a level of ethics that we need to withhold. I think we hold a lot of responsibility in this job because I'm sure there's a lot of people who go into your line of work who aren't very well. Would I be right in saying that?
Yeah, of course. And there's women in the industry that aren't very well. There's men. It's not gender based. It's just based off people. And so that's why, recommendations and testimonials and awards and all different things is what helps you put yourself in a safe way with someone in this, industry.
Is it hard to get insurance?
Well, I mean, yeah, I've got basic insurance, but
Yeah.
it's just, if they fall off the table or that sort of stuff. But I mean, you can't insure yourself for other things, I guess.
Yeah, I'm just curious, right? And I suppose the last thing I wanted to ask on this award was, how does someone vote for that? Do you go down on a bunch of women and then they say how good they rate you on a scale of 1 to 10 in each different topic, or
I mean, that would be the best way, right? Everyone on
it'd be good?
stage, 5 girls, 5 guys, they all
Yeah.
swap. That would be the best way, but it's not possible. You couldn't do that. But really, it's just a voting system. It is a bit of a popularity contest, but I think that what it shows is the testament to the amount of women that have had amazing experiences with that person and that want to vote and that value his service. I think that's really what it's about.
I'm curious, right? These are why I'm asking so many questions. I love these conversations. This is a bit like, in a way, therapy for me. I got to get to know someone deeply inside. And surprisingly, when I hit you with what the last guest left, it lines right up with what we're talking about, as it always does. But have you ever had any women book who you've had to turn down because they were unwell, whether it's a disability or something you thought, this isn't safe for me to be acting this out, or this isn't safe for me to pleasure this woman due to an intellectual disability or whatever it might be? Like, has that ever happened?
Yeah, I've come across a lot of that. Not a lot, 1%, let's say 1% of bookings. Disability, I'm fine with. I've seen many people with disabilities. The main thing is, they can clean themselves properly, they can brush their teeth, they don't have bad oral hygiene, and they don't have spasms where they're kicking and punching their arms, because that can happen. Other ones are suicidal sort of situations where they're trying to put themselves into dangerous situations as a form of self-harm, where someone's wanting me to completely choke them out and do things to them that they would not want normally. Like I said, very, very rare, but I'm able to distinguish, what is a positive experience for someone and what is not going to be a positive experience. If it's someone just wanting to explore kink, that's a whole different level. But if the first session they tell me they don't like being choked and they don't like being fingered hard, but then the next session they say they want me to choke them fuck out and finger them as hard as I can, then I'm going, well, why is this? And then I've figured out, it's come from a place of self-harm or, all that sort of stuff.
And what about I keep saying one last thing here. Has there ever been any fear around somebody that's been married that's come to you about a partner finding out, or an ex-partner, or like, I don't know, I guess I'm thinking about the intellectually disabled daughter that might be steered in the way of you, and then a father getting angry that you've taken advantage of their daughter or something like that, which I know you're not. But I guess I've just been a therapist. I just see people from so many walks of life and the way people think and the projection, I suppose, we put into the world.
Yeah, well, I've had parents book this for their children.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Which, intellectual disabilities, they can't work a phone, or, you know what I mean? But they've expressed to them these specific desires. Not a common thing, but it does happen from time to time. I've never had anyone be like, what the fuck, you did this to my wife? Because women are very, very discreet with things. Guys usually get caught out way more often than women do. So they've never really had any issues in that situation.
I'm going to have to go home and have a word to Sophie now and make sure she doesn't get your number.
Well, that just begs the better, why would married women book this?
Yeah, that's right. It's about me, right? Not about her.
Yeah, well, the women that I find that book this is usually because their partner's not giving them something.
100%. People generally don't seek out somebody else if they're happy with what they got. We only seek out something that we're missing inside of our life. Otherwise, we wouldn't bother seeking it out, right? Us men, right? Sometimes a fantasy could be in a closed down relationship. It could be, I want you to dress up in a nurse's outfit. It could be, I want you to be naked when I come home from work. I think we live in a world where patriarchy has caused a lot of dramas, and now we've got this sort of feminism movement, which, again, women, I've got two daughters, right? I'm mindful on how I say this as a man, but I think sometimes it's swung too far the other way where nobody's feeling fulfilled. I think a lot of women aren't feeling fulfilled because they don't want to accept that sometimes they might want their man just to come home and want to ravage them respectfully and consensually. I get a lot of clients who are like, I touch my woman on the bum in the kitchen and I'm told, don't fucking do that. Misogynist. And then 2 hours later, we're having sex in the bedroom and she wants me to grab her ass. And I don't know when's the right thing to do it. And I don't know when I can and when I can't do it.
Well, there's a lot of guys that have a bit of the Madonna law complex, which is, I don't agree on the words whore, but that's just the way that it's expressed, is that your wife or your partner is the beautiful Madonna. She's the mother of your children. She's the one you idolize, you respect, you care for the most, right? But then there's a lot of men that desire the whore. They desire the promiscuous woman, the slutty girl, the naughty one they shouldn't be with, right? And a lot of wives and partners want to be treated like his naughty little whore because they want their partner to really desire them. They want their partner to, you know, consensually, of course, grab them and take them, because being taken as a woman is getting you out of your head, because a lot of women are in their head. And so to be taken, to be ravished, is to be free, is to be desired, is to not be insecure, not have these, you know, thoughts in their head as much. Of course, depends on the person. But how do you implement that with the husband? Because then if you're the mother of their children, like, you don't want to slap her and hit her and just fuck her, right? She's someone you love and you care and you desire. And yeah, trying to find that balance of these women wanting to be ravished by their husband and they're just not feeling that from them. They're not feeling that from them at all, because the men don't look at their wife like that.
A lot of men are attracted to that type of woman, but yet I don't want my wife to be that person. And we see that in a lot of culture too, right? In a lot of cultures, in a lot of areas. And where do people find you? If someone's listening to this, where can they find you? Sophie, not you.
Well, PerthCentralMassage.com. I also have YouTube links, social media links, and I talk a bit about the industry and stuff there.
Which I'll put in the show notes. We're not finished yet, but I like to do this now. If anybody's interested, then there'll be a lot of information in the show notes on how to contact Chayse. My last guest, and he left the quote, "A little bit of light can erase a lot of darkness." What comes up for you when you hear that?
A little bit of light erases a lot of darkness.
Yeah, a little bit of light can erase a lot of darkness.
I think the first thing that pops straight off my head is the therapeutic clients that come here that have never been touched by a man in a positive sense. They have these after tears. And so when a client comes in and she cries before the session, it's tears of sadness. And when they cry after the session, it's tears of joy. And I think that that's the darkness seeing that light at the end.
There's probably a lot of healing that goes on as well in that. Therapy is therapy. And obviously you read my book, which was How You Got Here. What landed in my book for you, do you think?
It was a few weeks ago now. I think the brutal honesty, right? Like, obviously the title says it all, but it's really, you're not writing the things down to fit into any box or any social standard or anything. You're coming from a blunt, honest place of the way that, you know, human dynamics work and the way that, you know, men feel. I think there's a lot about men in there, which was great because it's not been spoken about much lately. And there's not many men that are talking about their feelings. And I think that's really, really incredible for you to be able to put out a bit of that. But yeah, I think it was just the blunt honesty I loved about it. No fucking around, just straight to the point.
And I suppose I'm going to ask you, do you get much judgment of people that knew you before you went into this role, friends and family and things like that? Like, because I know for me, a lot of my relationships have changed outside now that with what I do. It's because I don't really want to have the talk about Donald Trump, or I don't really want to have the talk about the price of fucking fuel or whatever's going on. I'm not interested in that, or the roadworks down the street. Unfortunately, I think I'm more into wanting that deeper conversation. Tell me what's really going on for you. Have you seen much of that in your transition into this role?
I'm fortunate enough that all of my friends that were friends before are still friends. I think that they've seen this path and journey along with me has helped them. It wasn't just one day, oh yeah, now I'm just going to be rubbing down women for money, right? Like, they've seen a path that I went down. They've seen the journey of the years of, you know, interesting topics we talked about. And, you know, I'm the friend they come to when they have love and sex problems, you know, because they know that I'm not going to judge or anything like that. So there's a mutual value and respect. I think it's more the people online than that. send the most hate, that really don't understand. And they that's their issue, because they don't actually believe a man can be positive and consensual and make this about her. They don't believe that. Just in their mind, they just can't fathom that a guy can be doing this consensually and for women. They just think automatically, they go straight to, he must be sexually abusing them. He must be getting something else out of this. They don't understand that someone can actually really care about people. They just don't see that. And that's a real shame.
And what about family? I know you mentioned at the start you came from a Jehovah's Witness father, I think you mentioned. How have they been able to handle this, do you think?
Well, from my knowledge, they don't know.
Okay.
Luckily, they're not very tech savvy and they're not too social. They will find out one day. If you know them, don't tell them. But they'll, I mean, it's not something I'm going to be able to hide forever. Surprised, they still don't know.
Okay.
Maybe they're just not telling me. But when I told my mum that I do massage, she said, "It's not erotic massage, is it?" And I said, "No, but good idea." Maybe I should.
Is that hard for you to put on those two roles? For me, I guess most therapists have two roles, right? They have the Chad version where I put the collared shirt on and I do my hair and I wear long pants and shoes. And then they have this version, which I've completely different role to you. But for me, I really try and bring myself to the session so that the Chad that I am at home with my daughter and Sophie, my fiance, and my daughters, is the Chad that somebody gets in here. Do you think there is a way of integrating that, or do you think you sort of have to separate and almost hide behind that? Not hide, I don't know if hide the word, but do you feel like there's ever a way where those two worlds can come together for you?
Of course, it's a shame that it's hard. I can't share those achievements with them yet. Winning this award or whatever the achievement is, I can't share that with them. That sucks. It'd be great to be like, hey, I did this. I succeeded in this. But as for bringing myself into sessions, women are very, very intuitive. They know it if you're faking it. Right? They know. You can put on as much as the front as you want. You can be as skilled as putting on a fake person as you can. Women just fucking know. I don't even know how they do it, but they just know. It has to. I was talking to this young guy actually Saturday night, not going to go on long, but this 20-year-old guy came up to me and I was in my suit after the awards night and he's like, "Oh, hey man, what you in the suit for?" I'm like, "Oh, just for this awards night." And I told him that I won this award, and there's this 20-year-old guy, this young guy is trying to get out there and you know, fuck some women, right? Like he's a 20-year-old kid who's trying to spread his seed. It's this testosterone in his body. And I'm just standing there with my fucking gym in my suit. And he's like, what's a tip? What's a tip you can give me to pick up these women? He's like, "Oh, I like women in their, mid-20s or somewhere around there. Someone with some maturity." And I'm like, well, he's in just a plain sweater, right? I'm like, you got to dress to get what you want. If you want a mature woman, you got to dress mature. But if you're running around the club looking at every woman, chasing every woman, women know this. If you just stand there with a drink in your hand, that can say a lot. There's sort of real lack of desperation. When you show this true confidence in yourself, the way you stand, the way you hold your posture, the way you nod at the girl walking past, right? It's the small cues that women pick up on. It's not running around chasing 21-year-old pussy. It's, you know what I mean? It's got to come from a true, authentic self. So what I'm saying is that during my sessions, I bring my true, authentic self. Otherwise, they would tell me you're faking it.
Yeah. And I think that's part of the reason I do what I do as well. I don't want to be this, I hide behind my notepad. I think it's what you see is what you get with me. One of the last things I wanted to ask you was, has this journey given you any answers to that, why you fell in love with two women, or what does that look like now for you, that where it started? Because I know for a lot of therapists, and I don't even know if they know it, they come into therapy to heal themselves. People just generally don't want to become a psychologist or a psychotherapist. There's a level of healing through the journey, right? And that's why I do my own therapy, because I don't want to be one of these people that there's a byproduct of healing that comes from me when a client or when someone sitting with me gets that aha moment or gets a release, a bit like an orgasm, right? When they get that release, that emotional energetic release, whether it's anger or frustration or sadness or grief, doesn't matter what it is. I also make sure that I do my own therapy once a week. But I suppose for you, what have you learnt? Like, have you got out of it what you set into it with? Do you think? Have you got any answers? Like, are either of those women in your life now?
Yeah, I mean that it definitely has given me some answers, and obviously that was 10 years ago now. It's been a long journey. You know, those women are long gone and married and whatnot in their own life now, so it's totally different. But one thing I've learned is that with any relationship, there's sacrifice, right? And just because I love two people, it doesn't mean I can't doesn't mean I can be with those two people. Obviously, polyamorous relationships are, you know, increasingly becoming more popular, and I am open to a polyamorous relationship. I'm not taking that off the table. I'm not taking monogamy off the table. I'm open to the connection that I have with that person and just being blunt and honest in who I am and willing to sacrifice other connections in my life. If she doesn't want a non-monogamous relationship, I have to sacrifice other romantic connections in my life. And she's going to be worth sacrificing for, right? Like, you're not just going to get in a relationship with anyone and sacrifice stuff, right? They've got to be someone that is unique and special and beautiful and amazing in their own individual way. And I hate how society, so many women are trying to be like each other, because it makes it difficult to find someone that is unique and beautiful in herself. And that's someone you're willing to really sacrifice for. So I think sacrifice is the key thing there.
Yeah, and I've been to a Buddhist teaching on that exact topic, that the highest form of love we can show is sacrifice. I've got an amazing partner, right? I've got an amazing fiance. I wouldn't have asked her to marry me a few months ago if that wasn't the case. But I think there is a level of sacrifice. The same with me. Like, I come with two kids and she
She's,
doesn't have
she's,
kids.
she's sacrificing, you're sacrificing. It's a mutual sacrifice. But you got to really, yeah, love that person, be with that person. And, you
Mm.
know, I think one of the problems nowadays is people just aren't willing to sacrifice.
I am in a monogamous relationship and I think that I always will be. I hope I'm always in this one, but I don't think I'm cut out for polyamory. But I think also for me, it's as much the fact of time constraints as having two daughters and then having the work that I do, and then I do a lot of travel. And I think for me, it would be more like Friday night comes along and I'm like, hey, darling, hey, Sophie, do you want to go out for dinner tonight? And she's like, oh, no, me and Chase are planning on going away for the weekend. And that would be the part I think I'd struggle with the most. Not so much the sex, although that would be part of it. I think it would be more the feelings of rejection, right? Because each time I want to, if it's the person that I'm in love with or a romantic relationship with, I hope that they're available when I'm available. And I think for me, it just definitely, not that I want it to be, and I've never been in a polyamorous relationship, um, but I think for me, it would be more than the sex part of it. And I think that is an issue with all relationships as well, right? We have good communication, right? And I think I could feel just as insecure if she was prioritizing all her girlfriends over me. I would feel just as insecure, I think, as if she was going away with another man. I've spoken about that a lot with a lot of clients and a lot of people in my own life, that a lot of people come to therapy because they feel like everybody else in their life is more important than they are, whether it's the boys at the pub, whether it's the guys they play golf with, whether it's the guys they go surfing with. I'm using men. When's the time for me? I think for me, my time is so valuable that if she was out every weekend playing sport or being away every weekend, that wouldn't suit me either.
No.
But I also think it would suit her for me to be doing that either.
Yeah. And it's a balance. If you want a fishing trip away and she organises a girlfriend's weekend away the same weekend, and then you both get a weekend away.
100%. And all comes back to communication, like we touched on. All right, we're at that time. I want you to leave a sentence, a line, a question, just one thing for the next guest.
What are you most willing to sacrifice for someone?
I love that. What are you most willing to sacrifice for someone? And we'll leave it there. If you're enjoying these conversations, hit subscribe. Not because I need another fucking follower, but because it helps more people find the show.